Hello, welcome to the July design stream.
Holy, wait, is it July?
It's July. Not only is it July, it's like July 11th or something.
I have a lot of work to do in a month, as you're aware, because you set the schedule. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I went to a con for pleasure this weekend. I didn't take the ceremonial day off after a con, so I'm a little. Might be a little bit squirrely. It was fun. My family goes every year. We took everybody this year. So, my son was too young because of the mask policies.
I see.
But now it was still masked. He went. I mean, he could wear a mask, but he couldn't be back. We didn't get him vaccinated in time last time, and now they weren't requiring vaccinations.
And you went. So you were at. You're gonna say the name of the con?
Convergence.
You were Convergence.
Yeah.
Okay. And for folks who are not from the Twin Cities, what is Convergence?
Convergence. So it started out as this cute little lit sci-fi con. So it was for people that read sci-fi literature in the 70s and 80s. You know, like the post Star Trek set.
Sure.
And then they got together and they would discuss novels. And then novelists used to go to it to work or to workshop or whatever, or to exchange ideas. And then it slowly grew up into this gigantic fandom thing. And so there's not, like, people are like, are you gonna go game? I'm like, well, there's gaming there, but that's not the focus of it. I mean, really a lot of it now is the different sci-fi groups around town will host parties in the rooms. And so there's like 3 floors of like drinking. It's really what's happening now. But there's still some lit panels, and there's still and there's a lot of fandom stuff going on. There's a lot of panels around fandom. My spouse and brother-in-law and his boyfriends dressed up as the cast of What We Do in Shadows.
Okay.
And so then they went in there. Because I never dress up because as a board game executive,
It's a very austere field.
I gotta be professional at all times, and I just don't have the energy. By the time I get home, like I'm like planning a costume. I mean, theirs was pretty elaborate. So for my brother-in-law shaved his beard so he could look like Colin Robinson from What We Do in Shadows. It's spot on. It's pretty eerie. You got the exact outfit, so it was pretty good.
Fun.
So, yeah, so we did that. The kids loved it. My son, they had these Minecraft blocks. And then that's basically what we did all weekend. We were running the Minecraft blocks. So
Are there many kids that come, or is it like?
Yeah, there's quite a few. They do a thing called Quantum Sandbox, where they do. You can go in and like all weekend it'll be like this hour is making sock puppets, and this hour is making cardboard robots, and there's one event where they make the city, and then all the kids run in and stomp it like a cardboard. Yeah. So. And then there used to be a panel that was just like STEM things for kids, and I think that they moved recently, and I don't think they have space for it yet.
Yeah,
so,
I got you. There's no future in STEM.
No, there's it's all done. It's all sci-fi. It's all sci-fi writers now. That's all there is. So anyway,
Awesome.
yeah. So let's talk about what you've been playing.
Cool. I've been playing. What have I been playing? So I've been getting into a new Hex Encounter game. Not a new game, but like another very old Hex Encounter system called The Great Campaigns of the American Civil War.
You'll never have to play a new one again.
It is. It's funny. I got one of them in the mail, and the amount of content in the box was like staggering. Like we were talking about Spirit Island recently, and how
Root.
Or Root.
Yeah.
But I feel like just nobody does high content like an established war game series where you're getting like 15 scenarios. Some of them are hundreds of turns long.
Ooh.
Like it would take like legit year. Like I think if I had a regular local partner who wanted to play, we could play twice a week for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Just based on the one thing.
On that one box.
On the one box. But the system is brilliant, and it's been making me think a lot about principles of conflict design. So I've been having a good time with that. And then I don't know, the usual video games. Although actually, I'm getting ready to play Pentiment. I'm very excited to play the new Josh Sawyer game, with the monks, the murder mystery computer game.
Cool.
It's apparently incredible. I'm excited to play it. But as a way of getting into it, I've been playing Pillars of Eternity. Oh my gosh, tea delivery, thank you. I've been playing Pillars of Eternity, which is, you know, kind of like a weird spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
And it is such an interesting design. And I got hooked into it because I knew Pentiment was good, so I started watching Josh Sawyer's GDC talks and his other talks that he's done. And he did a really interesting talk on like dump stats and just why like stat leveling is so fundamentally uninteresting. And I, you know, I have friends who are playing Diablo, and I think Diablo is just one of those games that's like not for me,
Right.
which is fine. But then as I'm watching them play it, I'm like, I want to like listen to people talk about why I don't like this. And I found his talks have been giving me the language for describing why I find it so uninteresting. But Pillars of Eternity 2 is legitimately wonderful, and I'm having a great time with it.
I've always wanted to do in D&D, just be like, what's your primary stat? I don't care what it is. What's your character? What's your secondary? And then what are the rest of your stats?
Sure.
And then just like, all right, so for your class, roll the primary stat now, roll secondary now, roll everything else now.
There's an interesting approach to these in Pillars of Eternity, which is that your stats never improve. So you roll them at the start, they will never change. And then the stats all reflect your engagement with core systems of the game. So like instead of strength, it's might,
Right.
which is about how much damage you can deal.
Right.
So if you're a wizard with high might, you're like throwing thunderbolts. Intelligence is about area of effect. So if you're a barbarian with high intelligence and you have an area of effect power, it has a really good area
Oh,
of
that's
effect.
cool. Yeah.
And so you can then, there are all these archetypes then for like the dumb wizard.
Right.
That like totally works within the framework, but it really asks you to be like constantly reevaluating how you're skilling your characters, and I don't know, it does fascinating things,
Interesting.
as opposed to just like the kind of line goes up.
Yeah.
style.
My strength is now 4,000 times what it was when I was born. Or
Correct.
when I was 18.
And it's almost high enough for you to wear that cool hat you just found.
And I found a hat on the ground and I can't wear it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And what have you been playing, Patrick?
I think this might be the first month I have been bad about video games. There I was on stream and I couldn't think of a dang game.
Have you played the diving game that everyone's playing?
I have not played that. It's on sale right now because
Yeah.
the Steam sale's going on. I played a little bit Diablo 4 because I've been playing it 2 hours a week with friends, but then I've been out of town, so that hasn't been happening. Hasn't hooked me like 2 or 3 did yet.
Interesting.
So I'm ready. I'm ready for it to hit me. I like the way that the characters progress too, but that might be it. It's because you have to make choices. Choices are hard, and you can reset. But it's like I've been like, oh, I don't know anything about this. I don't feel like I can explore the skill tree. It's really so. So I played a little Diablo 4. I did play some Stellaris. So there's this fun new thing on. So Stellaris got a big dot release last month, which added really drilled in on the leaders.
Yeah.
And it's if you're from the Stellaris dev team, I'm sorry. Watching this, it's a little bit. It was a little bit broken out of the gate in like a fun way. So like there's these builds now that you would never do for a nation that like really drill. You can specialize your leaders so much into one area and really drill into something silly. And so there's now people are, so there's all these great YouTube videos coming out right now. It's like, here's how to make your population grow really fast using leaders. And so I've just been watching those and then going and aping it to see, play the first 100 years and see how broken I can get the game. And so that's been fun. But no, actually, like my evening time lately has really been focused on, I've been trying to scale up my design skills. So I've been working on things that are not path at night. And so that has really eaten into my video game.
Sure,
Yeah. So
did you play the mini Stellaris?
I have not played it yet.
It's intriguing.
Is it?
Yeah, I can't. I legitimately don't know if it's good.
Yeah.
But I think the effort is cool.
Yeah.
To just ask that, because you have to ask yourself. I mean, when you're working on a computer game, you get to make all these cheats because you can just have the computer handle some strange calculations in relationship. You don't need the players to fully understand the systems.
Yeah.
And that Stellaris game, it's almost like they looked at Stellaris and said, could we make a fully transparent, simple Stellaris would actually be an interesting game?
Right.
And I don't know what the answer is, but the effort is really difficult and intriguing, and so
Right.
it's cool they would spend time working.
Those
on it.
peasants. Stellaris is completely transparent to me anyway.
But-
I'm joking.
No, okay. but do you think? I mean, it's what I mean by transparency is that the game can get away with using a complex function
Right.
instead of using something simple because it doesn't have you don't have to worry about a player doing the arithmetic.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so like the
Like I say, Stellaris is 10%. You win by having a 10% advantage.
right,
and stuff.
right, and like that isn't oftentimes that doesn't translate to like an interesting turn-based game, and
Right.
so it's kind of fun to see the elements.
So for those who don't know what we're talking about, Stellaris just came out with is it called Infinite?
It's like Stellaris Infinite. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It has
So
a name.
It's supposed to be like if Eclipse or TI were a video game. So I mean, I hate to say TI very fast, but compared to Stellaris, TI is fast.
Sure, no, that's true.
Yeah, I think I am. So they just asked if I'm interested in the Star Trek one. I will definitely try it. I like Star Trek a lot.
I have
and-
not played Stellaris since like literally like the first DLC wave. I think I might hop on for the Star Trek.
You're like leaders. What is that even referring
Yeah, exactly.
to?
I have no idea. I played I think I got Stellaris on sale when it had the first DLC.
Yeah. So
I actually, so 2 notes on that. One,
Yeah.
I played Eclipse Second Edition because my kids, we've got TI on our shelf.
Yeah.
They want to play TI, and I have 2 older kids, 7 and 9, who TI, it's just too political.
Yeah.
And like we could kind of play it, but it wouldn't be that fun. It
Right.
would be a lot of work for the kind of joy they'd get out of it. But then a new game store just opened up near us, and I like to, I'm going to go buy something from the new game store just to support them right away. Dreamer's Vault opened up a branch on Larpenter.
Oh, interesting.
And I went there, and they had the second edition of Eclipse. Eclipse is a game I've played a lot of, but not recently. I played a lot of it when it came out. And I had heard the second edition was very well done, and especially because we're working on ARC's box pack-up questions and UI questions, I was like, oh, I'll pick up a copy of Eclipse. And we have played it 3 times since we got it a few days ago. And the kids love it. It's like perfectly, I mean, Eclipse is a lovely game, but the kinds of like decisions it presents you with, which is like, spend this, it's gonna cost this much, you sure you wanna do that? It's just very, the Euro-ness and how it kind of holds the hands of the players.
Yeah.
And how much player versus environment fighting there is, especially in the 3-player game, makes it like work really good with kids.
Sure.
And I've been really enjoying it, so. having
I'm
a good
pulling
time
my
with that.
hair out inside my head because I can occasionally play like not so like Bad Neighbor, that game we picked up at Origins
Sure.
with my child, and nothing.
We
much
do
deeper.
our Eclipse games. We do 6-turn games, so they're a little abbreviated. And it's 90 minutes.
It's still like an Eclipse game. Yeah.
It's still they're still playing an Eclipse game. And then the other thing I was going to mention is all the Star Trek talk. Kate, my partner, and I have been watching the new season of Strange New Worlds,
Yeah.
which is exceptionally good, like
Yeah.
the first season was. So,
I'm excited. I think we're gonna get to that 2 or 3 shows from now. Pretty soon. Yeah.
It's the only one that we're watching. We really love it. Very very happy with how it's all
We're
turned out.
watching What We Do in Shadows right now.
Oh yeah, this is the funny thing about the new Stellaris game. A good moment, and I'm just riffing off of Da Vinci's comment. There's like this hand management component with these edicts, and there's all this stuff that is similar to ARC's things. And I'm like, it's just an interesting moment of parallel development where I'm like, oh, there's like obviously they ran into some of the similar problems that we ran into and had similar kinds of ways of sorting.
Sure.
It's kind of cool.
So in base Stellaris, there's an edict fund, and then there's laws you can pass that just to be like increase your energy production by 20% at the cost of 80 of your edict fund, and then you can turn off whenever you want to. Cool.
So studio news. It's summertime at Leader Games.
Which means
Busyness. Our staff during the summer swells a little bit because we have interns and usually some kind of seasonal hires come in to just help us with play testing and all sorts of things. In fact, one reason why the stream looks so nice today is because the production interns and your production assistant helped build out the stream system and work on it a little bit. It gives the office a very different feel because usually
so
on
tired.
the average day, there's like 5 to 10 people.
Yeah.
And now the average is like 8 to 16.
yeah. So we picked up 7. Am I right? 7 people.
Not that many.
Yeah.
No, yes, you're right. But in different capacities.
2 interns, We picked up a contract graphic designer. Why am I counting backwards? That's weird. My PA and 3 testers.
And 3 testers
Yeah.
coming. So usually, before COVID, we would run like a little testing camp where for 2 weeks, we'd have maybe 10, 15 people come in full time and they would be vetting things. But because ARX has so much content and because we were working on so many projects, instead of doing that, we said, what if we just got 3 testers to come in 2 days a week? Which has been great. We have
but now we legit have 3 projects in studio right now.
Yeah. So
sorry, I interrupted your thunder.
No, not at all. Because so we have this huge amount of testing bandwidth, which is excellent. But it also means that, during, let's say it's October, if one of us is having like kind of a sleepy, quiet day, it's okay.
Yeah.
But now it's a little bit more like running a camp or a seminar or something where we need to be kind of completely on it the entire time, and it is exhausting. It's fun, and we're getting a ton of work done. But it's also.
This morning I was thinking a lot about that executive director hire I tried to make, and I was like, damn, that just worked out. It's gonna be a different story.
But it's good. We're always trying to figure out like what the true good best size of the company is, and these moments where the staff swells are always really good moments to say like, oh yeah, what would the company be like if we had 3 or 4 extra folks? And it's interesting. So everything's going really well. The big news for the studio is that we'll be of course at Gen Con in a month, less than a month from now, 3 weeks from now basically.
Oh my god.
Gen Con is, it's always a fun show. So I think Patrick, you and I will both be there. We'll have about half the staff there. Kyle, yes.
Yeah, so I can't remember.
And like Claire and Josh will be there. Kyle, yes. Sorry, I keep thinking no, but
Kyle, yes.
It is Kyle, yes. Kyle, yes. Josh, yes. Anyway, it's gonna be great. I'm
very excited. I'm very excited to see that everybody did it.
Yeah. And we're going to have a kind of smaller booth kind of near the Artists Alley area. We'll be showing Ahoy and Root. And then I will have an ARX copy with me. And we'll maybe be stealing away some games of it. Not like at the booth, but I'll probably be kind of using the booth for networking. I'm basically going to be living at the booth. We have enough folks coming that our schedules are not too intensive.
You and I are both off for 2 days.
Yeah.
You might even be off for 3, I don't know.
What do you mean off?
Like,
I have 1 day where I don't have anything scheduled. Where I'll be playing. I'll be playing.
Yeah, I mean, off at a show still means I'm doing something.
Having meetings.
You just can't talk. You can't buy something directly from me at the show.
But I'm looking forward to it. Gen Con is I don't know. Gen Con is a show I've been going to for a long time. I like it. I like it quite a bit.
It's very fun. I'm looking forward. I probably should bring Path. I don't know.
We'll
see where we're at.
See where you're at. Maybe bring Block.
Maybe bring Block.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about showing it to Dylan, who's one of our interns, and see if he wants to run with it for a bit.
That'd be fun. And then Friday morning, I think the Orc Stomp 5K is overbooked, but I might try to just sneak in anyway.
Just run it.
Yeah, just run it. Just run it with
that'd be peak Orc of you.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like I'm just trying to be true to the Orc energy of the race.
I didn't know there was going to be a 5K at a convention.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
Yeah, it happened last time.
Did it?
Yeah,
okay.
I stumbled into it. But yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to. It's just a very... Indy is a fun city to run in because they've got the little like canalway, and then you're right by the big park by the zoo. So
that's great.
Yeah, they're good walks.
So Origins for me, because I'm now able to run 25 minutes, which I don't even know if I really can on the street. I can run in my basement for 25 minutes. Way easier show. Despite the fact that I was super sick at the show.
Sure.
I still wasn't getting back to the room, just completely wrecked. So.
Let me think. So that's Gen Con, and then the studio is busy. We have...
Someone asked what Block was.
Oh, Block is a game we'll probably talk about a little bit.
I was going to talk about it a little bit, yeah.
This summer, we are finishing ARX. We are working on some new Ahoy stuff, which we'll talk about more in the future. We are working a little bit on some new Oath stuff. We are starting to test the water on some Root stuff. And Patrick is working on Path and a host of other small projects that we are, they're just kind of in the ether. They're just, it's one of those things, I think about them as...
The skunk works, is how I think about them.
Yeah, they're like little proofs of concept that you're not quite sure, like, are they going to flower into something big or not? Who knows? And yeah, so all those things are just kind of active projects that we have underway at different steps. And yeah, should we just get into it and start talking about it?
How is ARCS going?
ARCS is going good.
Do you want to do ARCS yet? Let's do ARCS yet.
I can do ARCS.
Okay.
I can do ARCS. I have a ton of ARCS stuff to talk about. So, all right, we will be releasing an update hopefully towards the end of this week where I'll talk about some of this stuff. But the ARCS is going very well. We're almost done. Is the short version is the schedules, like when I build my little ARCS calendar, they now include things like final submission date, design lock. Like we are at the end. It's visible. I think that there is a pretty good chance that we have the game completely design locked by the end of August, or even a little bit earlier than that. So we're like in the last 2 months of content design. The kinds of things that we're spending our attention on are the most frustrating genre of design problem, because they feel impossibly huge and consequential, and then you realize that your eyes are inches from the canvas, and it's this huge canvas, and you just need to, like, I sat down with 3 or 4 folks yesterday to talk about one particular element of the game, and we spent like a solid hour hemming and hawing about like essentially what is like a single number and whether it should be 2 or 3 or something like that. And I'll spotlight a few of those things in just a little bit. So the big view of ARCS is that the game is close enough to being done that we are now comfortably locking things like the miniature design, the wood piece design. The dice are probably going to get finalized and locked like this week. The card number count will probably be locked by the end of July. We have all our graphic designs set up. I just went through the art with Kyle. We like looked at all the art that Kyle had done and sort of said like, okay, this is the work that remains. We have a sense of the kind of illustration that is left. So that's all very exciting. The game is not done, and it's way too early to celebrate. But the next like 2 months have a pretty clear shape. This is also letting us finally figure out precisely like what the production and release schedule is going to be like, which we'll be able to talk more about probably in a month or 2. But it's all coming along. Okay, so for ARC stuff, I want to spotlight a few things. If we could
Excellent segue.
Yeah, miniatures. Yeah. Definitely we're going to talk about those miniatures. Let's start by talking about those images that I sent. I think the first one is the image of the cards, the art image. Okay, so we are getting a lot of card art in. That's very exciting in ARCS land. And I wanted to highlight these because one of my favorite things about the way the card art works in ARCS is that Kyle has room to like build these little like micro narratives and use the same characters over and over again. Right. It's something that we had kind of wanted to do in Oath, but it ended up sort of getting muted, which is how the product turned out. So for instance, these cards are from the Caretaker plotline, and you can see like that image of the Caretaker on the Fate card, which will be a tarot card, is also the image that is used in a kind of like sepia or like a color, a desaturated form on all the card backs associated with that plotline. But then those same characters are going to be on guild cards in their set or event cards in their set and all sorts of things like that. So really happy with seeing how all the art's coming together. In terms of the layouts, we have almost all the graphic design work has been sketched out. So we're getting ready, actually this week and next week, our graphic designer is going to be starting to like assemble the actual final templates and layouts. And then basically as things get done, they're gonna go right into layout. If you are part of the Woodland Warriors, you've already seen a big chunk of the rules, which are in like 80% done final layout, and they're looking really, really nice.
I just wrote orbs in my notes over and over. So that's really cool.
Yeah, the whole, like it's one of those moments where I feel like the physical like art as an art object, or ARCS as an art object, is starting to kind of like realize itself. And some like plans and decisions that Kyle made, you know, like a year ago are now like really bearing fruit. And I love how the palette has worked and everything. I mean, every art drop that we've had, Kyle sends us his art once or twice a week. He'll send us a big brick of art, and every one of them has made me more excited to play the game. And the amount of art in the game is similar to Oath. A little less, but there are more cards. One other thing that's kind of hard to see here is on the plot lines, like that character art also gets used, like we derive a bunch of textures from it. So like everything that is in that plot line like keys off the character illustrations. It all comes together really nicely. Okay, so we've also been spending a lot of time working on single session stuff.
Have I seen the box yet? Sorry to interrupt.
Is
that the way we're doing the box going to be the box, or are we gonna?
Well, we're not sure. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Well, I can talk about it in a little bit.
Talk off camera.
No. We don't talk off camera about it. So we've also been working on the single session. So this guy right here, the Fuel Drinkers, this is one of the starting powers in the single session game. These have been really interesting. The starting powers, so we have tried a bunch of different cuts in the starting powers as we're fleshing out the single session. What we found was in games, so Ark, the single session game of Arks wasn't originally designed to be used to have special powers. But the special powers provide players with identity and orientation, and we found that that was like definitely something that we should look at. Originally, they were just one neat power. And then at various times, they've been more complex or less complex. So for example, some people who have been on the Woodland Warriors Discord bar have seen this card, but they saw a different version of it. So the Fuel Drinkers here, their special power is that they can always tax fuel. No matter what the city type is, they can always pull fuel. But their power also comes with a restriction, which is after the Tycoon condition is scored, they drink all their fuel. They trash it out.
They party.
It creates a really interesting dynamic where you are strong in something that is also eroding. Your position is constantly eroding.
Yeah.
Now, originally we had built these grand ambitions in where there were victory objectives that were associated with it. And what we kept finding is that the space around the grand ambitions was too restrictive. And it kind of messed up the game. So what happened in short is that if I was really good at the Tycoon condition, that meant you weren't going to declare the Tycoon condition. So, and now I'm only going to declare the Tycoon condition if I'm winning, which I naturally am. So now if I get a hand that has the Tycoon condition, bully for me. If I don't, my power isn't really firing as well.
Right.
And even if that's happening on my end, you're not incentivized to engage with it, so it has this chilling effect on ambitions generally. And so what we instead tried to do is say, like, look, these factions do have affinities towards the different victory conditions. We're not going to give them scoring bonuses. We're not going to give them special objectives, because the most expressive thing we can do is design a power, and potentially a power with some restrictions that forces them to engage with the game differently, but they're going to work on a couple different ambitions.
Sure.
And we're hoping that plus the asymmetric setups, which were at the bottom of the card, you don't need it, yep, they're still up there. The asymmetric setups at the bottom, that's enough to give the player identity. So the grand ambitions we've been toggling kind of like on and off in the design. And this is one of those like fussy things that we're not totally sure if they're going to be in the game. But I think what we've found with Arks is that the game is best when it leans on its own strengths, and the way victory points are scored in Arks is with the ambitions. So whenever we create a different way of scoring victory points, if it's undermining the ambition system, it's probably not going to work.
And if it doesn't undermine it, it won't get used.
Yep, pretty much it. And then, so actually on that point, you can show the next image, which is the player boards. Oh, the other one. There it is.
The other player board.
So here's the current player board. This is precisely what I mean when I talk about the fussiness of these changes. So we have gone from 2 rows of cities to 1 row of city to 2 rows to 1 row to 2 rows to 1 row. Are there 6 cities? Are there 5? Just back and forth a ton of times. And it's very easy to convince yourself, like, oh, if we don't have a 6th city, the game is helplessly broken. But this is, in fact, a very small element of the game. What we've done here is basically created a single row, so you're always building your cities from left to right. Critically, they are unlocking hold slots. So you start the game with only 2 hold slots plus your initial city, which will give you your 3rd. And then your 4th city will give you another hold slot. But then after that, the city that you unlock gives you a scoring bonus that says if you win first in an ambition, you get some additional points. Now, we don't know if the scoring bonus is going to be +1 or +2 or some combination. We're still figuring out the exact number. But basically what it does is it says if you win an ambition and you have a lot of cities on the board, you're going to get extra points. This is good because the game is more interesting when there are more cities on the boards, because cities are liabilities. You usually don't want to have a bunch of cities on the board. They're places where people can raid from you, they can tax from you. But the game is more interesting when you have those liabilities out. So we've made the board positions be kind of bids where like if I win a condition and I have a wide board position, I have more points at stake.
Sure.
It seems to be working really well. And related to that, we've been having this very long conversation about precisely the dynamics of tyrant scoring and how hostage taking works and all that stuff, which I'm not even going to go into right now. But just know that like we're arguing about whether or not taxing an enemy city should give you 1 captive or 2, or a number between 1 and 2.
There isn't a whole number between 1 and 2.
Yeah. So sometimes 1, sometimes 2. We briefly experimented with like letting you tax your opponent's shipyards, which taxed their ships into your captive box. So it would basically like shrink their ship pool. I really liked this as a gameplay effect. It was interesting because it meant that there was liability to having a bunch of shipyards on the board. The problem was it made the tax action really irritating to write, because you say like, you can tax your own city. Or if you're taxing an enemy city, you get this. Oh, and also you can tax an enemy shipyard. And I'm like, the tax action was 1 line.
Yeah, that's getting to some
and now
vast
it's
territory
like,
there.
Yeah, now it's like 3 lines. And somebody asked, do the fates that remove cities and setups still remove 3? Yes. So some of them are going to start with different amounts of cities on the board. So that's all the stuff for the design. And then the last thing to show is the flagship board, which I just want to like gesture to. One of the last elements of the campaign game that we are vetting. So basically there are 3 things in the campaign game that we are still vetting. So we are vetting flagship stuff. So this is a slightly new cut of the flagship. It's a little simpler. It's actually a fair bit simpler, a little clearer. Josh has been working on it this past week. In conjunction with the flagship mode, we're also doing final plotline balancing, mostly around the Act 3 plotlines and the C plotlines. There's a few that need a little bit of work, but they're close. And then the last thing that we're vetting in the campaign game is the 2-player game, which will go into big testing starting next week. So I think it's going to take about a month to go through all the content and make sure all the 2-player stuff is working, and that month kind of starts next week.
What is a flagship mode?
What is a flagship mode? Flagship mode is some of the plot lines will kick you out of your home.
Cool.
And these have actually been built. It's kind of a sneaky catch-up mechanism where if you have a really bad game, when you go into the...
Just peace out.
You can just peace out. So the flagship mode, in short, is my like little love letter to Homeworld, which is my favorite science fiction computer game by far. And which I will say has also, despite the clunky interface, aged beautifully.
Not Doom?
Not Doom.
All right.
It's Doom science fiction. I know it's on Mars, but is it really science fiction?
All right.
But I adore Homeworld. And what I liked about Homeworld was, you're building this big arc, this big generation ship, but then it also talks about like the consequences that turn it into a true generation ship.
Sure.
You like go on the test flight, you come back, your planet's all busted up. And then you go on this little journey. And so I really wanted that amount of responsiveness. So like, one goal in the design of arcs was to not have all the plot lines be violent or just about war. And I realized pretty early on that if your player unit is a state, states express themselves with violence. So like you're gonna have mostly violent stuff happen in the game. But if you can loosen that and not have your player position be a state, then other things open up. And so the way we built this into the plot line is that sometimes we'll have, in the interphase, players get to draft their roles in reverse power order. So the players that are losing get first pick. When they pick a plot line, some of those plot lines have flagships. The flagship mode, the flagship plot lines are designed to help the players who might really be struggling. So it's like, hey, you're abandoning everything and you're going to go hang out with the Blight.
Look, a nation is too much for you to manage.
Yeah, exactly. What do we give them?
Here's a spaceship.
Well, and this is also like I really love the games Romance of the Three Kingdoms, those old strategy games. And there was one of them, like a later one, like 8, which had this system where you could get demoted and be like mayor for a while and then kind of like slowly work your way back up.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved the idea. I don't think it ever worked in the game that well.
I mean, you talked about that in Crusader Kings also. Yeah. So eventually become you can just be you were king 4 generations ago and now you're just mayor.
Can you scroll?
Yeah, so what they were asking is, do you think the game will have a tournament scene like Root does?
I hope so.
Essentially, that's what we're asking about.
I hope so, because I am, and this is probably recency bias, but I would be much more interested in playing Arcs competitively than Root competitively.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because there's a clarity, and there's a little. I think there are two things.
Root and Vast are story engines.
There's story engines, and there's a rigidness to how like good Root is played.
Yeah.
And in Arcs, I'm continually surprised by like very odd plays
Sure.
that are also strategically very rich. And so I hope so. I don't know if the campaign is well suited to it, but I think that the single session game is for sure.
I'm just going to attack the blocks.
Yeah,
every Arcs game I play.
Yeah, just attack the blocks. Okay, so that's all that stuff. I've actually got a little bit of Arc show and tell.
Yeah, please do.
All right, so we're going to save the minis for last.
I have nothing of substance to say.
So one thing that we're doing is we're trying to figure out how to store this game, and I will show you what that looks like.
I didn't know these were going to be on stream. Excellent. I'm excited.
Here we go. So this is the campaign of Arcs. This is all the content in the campaign. We're putting it in these Gamegenic Fortress 320 boxes, but there are all the cards right there. This is half the campaign or so.
Wait, we're doing that, or we're doing that?
Yeah, we have
right
a partnership
now?
with Game. No, we're just doing it right now. But this gives you a sense. This is sleeved, by the way. So look, I do love you, sleeved peoples.
What's a sleeve?
I've never heard of a card.
Never heard of this.
So if you take these two boxes, and again, this is about all the cards in the game, and put them side by side, you almost get a Root box, basically.
Right.
And so what we're going to do is we're thinking that originally we had hoped that we would build an Arcs box that could just like hold everything. As we've been playing the game, we've realized that is not even something you want.
Right.
What you want is a box for all of the expansion content.
Right.
And you want another box for the core game. Because if you're just going to like your local meetup and you just want to play a game of Arcs, you grab the box that's the size of the Root box and you go play Arcs. And if you're going to play a campaign, you bring the big campaign box. And so what we've been doing basically is, and I'm going to kind of like sketch out. There's, by the way, like a 10,000 word like design thing about the box building for this game. But the very short version is, for the short term, we've been designing a box that holds the campaign and keeps a lot of the board setup very, very quick.
Sure.
It keeps it very fast. And then all the stuff you need for the single session game is like separated in its own box.
Right.
And when you play the campaign, you'll use both boxes. If you are just playing single session, you're just going to use the one box. Someday we might make a big box for Arcs. And we're actually taking steps now to design all of this stuff so it would be compatible with that product eventually. But what we found was when we wanted to make like the super Arcs box of our dreams, it was extremely expensive.
Right.
So we were faced with this choice of like, do we make something that we know isn't as good?
Right.
Or do we just make something that is a very good solution for the immediate product and then build it in a way that will help create something else in the future? So if Arcs does well, and there's a lot of content and people want us to do a big box, unlike Root, this is a product that is like designed for it.
Yeah.
We will see how that. We'll see.
I'm actually. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just pretending I'm sad about a big box.
So here's how it looks. I don't know what the camera situation is going to be.
I wouldn't dare have an opinion about Cole's game anyway.
So no, please do. So the Arcs campaign, the way it stores itself right now, we are currently testing different. Oh yeah, this is that dark table is not helping us. I don't know. It's fine. Right, like that perfect. Okay. So
I'll play. Can you send us a new tabletop?
yeah, please.
Yeah.
You know, but we have the Lightwood. So here's like this is the size of like a Root box out to here maybe, and so we've got the walls of the Root box here, and then this is about as deep as a Root box. So if you put a card on its side in a Root box, and then you can have dividers, it's going to fill up the box.
I'm just happy the studio worked.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, right. Two camera. We actually have more than two today.
Well.
Yeah.
So originally our plan was basically to tell everybody throw all the stuff in the box and then have photos or have bags or have a piece of paper you fill out to record the game session. We are experimenting with a plastic tray system. So actually I brought these trays. This is from Feast for Odin. And I just said like, okay, there are 24 spaces in an Arcs map. What if we had 2 trays like this that just stacked on top of each other, and they would be labeled, you know, this is cluster 1, and here are the 3 planets, and here's the gate for that cluster.
Oh, sure.
And you just collect it up, put them in these little bins. So then I've been working with our wonderful production interns to build these trays. So here we have a double tray that's 24 zones that will hold the entire board position of ARCs. Now this box is a little bit taller than Root's box. It's a little bit closer to TMM, but it holds the entire board position with only needing minimal notes. So there might still be a piece of paper that says like, look, you need to write this down or write that down. But basically, you're going to set up this game and tear it down without having to consult photos or anything like that.
Right.
Someone asked, will you still be able to save the game state of the campaign arcs but play short arcs? No, you'll have to take a photo if you want to do that.
Okay.
Because basically you have to choose. Like if you're putting your physical arcs pieces in this tray,
Right.
you can't play a game with them without taking them out of the tray. For folks who want to do that, you take a photo.
Or buy a second core set.
Or you buy a second core set. And so we've been doing, we're basically trying to figure out exactly how big these should be. So for example, here's a bunch of ARCS pieces in this tray. This will fit miniatures, of course, as well as the wood, all that stuff. So yeah, a lot of discussion about the ARCS. A lot of discussion about how the ARCS campaign packs away and what the boxes are going to look like. Hoping to have that stuff largely figured out within, I don't know, 3 weeks or so. We'll see. And the last thing I have to show you is we got from the factory. There's miniatures in this box. And I'm going to put them down again and just ask you to do your best with the overhead camera.
Put it back in the line.
All right, here we go. So here we have our white samples, our wax samples from the factory. They're resin, actually. I don't know if you call it a white.
Well, it's wax because the mold was, yeah.
Right. But these are 3D printed resin, so.
Yeah.
So anyway, they look great though. Super happy with these. I'll just kind of hold them up a little bit.
Turn them over. Yeah, there you go. Yep, you want the point going that way, towards the end, this way.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You don't want your people upside down.
Yeah.
There's no up in space. That's right. See. For scale, they're a little smaller. Here's a root meeple. Just put that.
For scale.
I'm about physical comedy. This large ship right here is a little bit smaller than an oath. I almost said a path meeple because you've been using it for path. An oath pawn.
Yeah.
It's about the size of an oath pawn, so it's like a pretty meaty piece. The wooden piece that it corresponds to, you can see here, is just about the same size. The volume here, these are a little thinner than oath pieces, still pretty thick though. And then I don't have other wooden pieces there. This little guy, the ship, is smaller than a root, certainly not as tall as a root meeple, but probably about the same volume. We actually went through a lot of versions to figure out the proper scale here because a sector or a system in ARCS is going to have pieces that are damaged and also undamaged. And we had to make sure that they were large enough to be expressive of that game state, easy enough to pick up, you couldn't have it fill it up. And then lastly, we have these little agent guys. Yeah. Now, the agent guys, which is my personal favorite piece, these little David Bowie friends, they have gone through an interesting evolution. So originally they were meant as specialist pieces where you would get a technology that unlocked the piece. What happened was the more we worked on that, the more we realized that ARCS really doesn't want to have two different types of ships. It just breaks a lot of things down. It gets very silly. It's fundamentally not like TI or Eclipse in that way. But the cubes that we were using for the influence cubes and the bids started to get all this identity. We started just calling them operatives and agents, and people were using them to spy on each other and things like that. And so what we've done is we decided instead of giving players 3 of these, let's give them 10 and replace the cubes with those pieces. So we have a wooden meeple version of this, which players will get. And I'm happy to say that the total number, classic Leader Games fashion, the total number of miniatures and ARCS has gone from in the mid 80s to about 120, 115. And thankfully we are still in budget. They're all going to be, they'll all have a nice wash on them.
Hello? Yeah, cancel the purchase agreement on the summer house.
Yeah,
okay, bye.
Done. Yeah, and we did a lot of putting them on their sides to test the damage and figuring out all that stuff. I am so happy that someone said they look like the Lewis Chessmen because I literally just wrote that in the draft of the designer diary. When we were first working on the concepts for the miniatures and Kyle and I were talking about it, we didn't want like spindly action figure-y looking miniatures.
Yeah.
I wanted like blocky, like as if they came out of stone, and the Lewis Chessmen were something that were on my mind.
I think that should just go right in our mission statement. That the pieces that we work on should be as iconic as, or attempt to be as iconic
they should like
as,
try, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the conversation we
Because
we
I,
wanna
you know,
be
you
in.
think about like Vast. I always think about Vast, the knight meeple standing on the first 5 tiles, as being kind of the way I see that game like presented, and then like Root, I see the cat and the raccoon, their silhouette as not just their shape, but their silhouette as meeples. You know, so a little bit turned aside. Oath.
Yeah,
You got those big chunky guys, and you got
proud
the
little guy.
followers. Yeah.
And I think, you know, one thing that we wanted with these sculpts is, you know, Kyle builds this beautiful hand-drawn world, and we want the miniatures should look like they're coming from that world and not from a 3D render or something like that. The other concern that we had is, for a game like this, the miniatures should probably be stored in a bag. They're going to jostle, and so we have worked hard to make sure there aren't like any overhanging things that are going to bust out or anything. In fact, the little miniature ship has like 2 little stovepipes on the top. We've welded those together just to stop them from breaking.
Or getting between things. Yeah.
Yeah, because we just didn't want them to get like snapped off or anything like that. They'll be PVC miniatures. I'm really happy with them,
And they'll be washed.
and they'll be washed.
Yeah.
We just picked. I think we're gonna do a black wash on them.
And then the final initiative marker will, of course, be the Pixie Lantern miniature from
Yeah, exactly.
Vast
We had
TCC.
to use it. Yeah,
we
had
have to use
something.
it.
I just talked to the initiative marker about the initiative
Committee.
marker. Yeah, to the initiative marker committee. No, I talked to Kyle about it yesterday, and one thing we talked about was the initiative marker is a handled piece. So we have to design an icon for it, but also it's going to be a piece that's going to get passed around. And my only prompt to him was, it needs to look like a piece from a space chess set. It needs to have a like gamic,
a king or queen or a rook.
It needs to have like a gamic quality to it.
Yeah.
And it needs to look good large because it's going to be a big piece that gets passed around.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're doing such a good job. I mean, you know, that's praise coming out of me, but
Patrick hasn't played in a while. Is what
I
he's
haven't
really
played in a
saying.
while.
Well,
I'm a little nervous.
You've been busy with lots of stuff.
yeah, I've been busy.
Let me give like a small little update on some other projects, and then I want to hear about Path.
Let's talk about Path afterwards.
Okay, so other projects very quickly. Oath expansion stuff is going well, but is just sort of going. Like basically, I need to be done with arcs before I can assemble it. What we've done with the Oath expansion is we have a few teams looking at different parts of the game.
It's so cool. We have a 4th team.
Yeah. So we have some people who are working on fleshing out a solo and potentially cooperative version of the game, which is very exciting.
I didn't hear about that. I'm not angry. I'm just like, ooh, cool.
So we have folks working on that. I'm very excited to see what they come up with. We have people working on new cards. I've been working on new Chronicle elements. All that stuff is basically at the end of the summer, we're going to come together and say like, okay, here's all the stuff we've generated. How do we assemble it and put it into some kind of development? So it's coming along. It's just going slow. We have started very preliminary looking into some root stuff. Very early on, like hardly worth talking about. Just know that like it's something that we're probably going to do. And then the one that's
We have a schedule for the proposal.
Yes, we have a schedule for the proposal. The promise ring.
The promise ring of expansions, yes.
And then Nick has been working on new Ahoy content that is so good and wonderful. I knew it was going to be good, but I was surprised when I sat down and played one of the new factions the other day. I felt like, my God, this is just such a clever piece of design.
Him putting it onto the board. I told him this at launch. I was like, it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like I think there are a lot of folks who might, especially in our like core audience, who looked at Ahoy and thought this is simpler than Root, and so it's like not as deep.
Yeah.
And these Ahoy factions, like I would want to play them competitively. They are so interesting, and they like change how you think about it. In the same way that when the first time people played a game of Root without the cats because we had moles now and all this things.
Yeah, yeah.
It kind of changed how people thought about Root.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the new Ahoy stuff does that too, where it's like it kind of shakes like, oh no, this is what makes the game different from Root, and also look at this huge space to explore when you start putting these kind of action limiters on. So I'm really excited about it. The details of how many factions precisely and how we're going to share them with you all will come in the future, but we don't even know yet.
Yeah. I can just blurt it out, but
We do kind of know, but,
Yeah.
but we need to wait. But we need to wait. Cool. All right, that's all the stuff that this side of the studio is working on, or is roughly happening, and Patrick's in all these conversations too. But you've been working on.
I've been working on Path intensely.
Path.
Like the point that I barely remember my kids' names. It's awful.
Path and Path 2.
Path 2. That's funny. That's a joke. I won't tell you the origins of it, but sometimes my daughter will go, Patrick 1 and Patrick 2 and Patrick 3. I can tell you later the origin of that. It's kind of a mean story. Yeah, Solo Oath, apparently. So I've been working on Path. As if you watched a month ago, is our open world adventure game. Man, I really want to put that on Settleblock. Open world fantasy adventure game. It's like it's the first one or something.
Like it's the first one.
I packed up another game to bring it to the office. I can't remember the name of it, but the side of it did say a post-apocalyptic strategy game, and I was like, cool. Yeah. That's all you needed. And so we've been working on it. I don't know how to explain how it's like. I can explain mechanically how it's different, but why it got to different and why it's helping is so I'll just start explaining the changes. So we moved away from the path cards being the victory points, because it used to be there's only 3 points to win the game.
Yeah.
Well, how's work 3 of me? We need some
If
points.
thinking about the paths as like betrayal haunts, it was like when you won the haunt, you'd get a point.
You get a point, and then you get 3 points. And the chart I drew was, as a middle-aged board game executive, my objectives for fulfillment in life are very far away and are very different scale than when I was 20. And so for me, that was acceptable design, because I was like, oh, you tell me I have to kill a dragon, then I will start making a plan to kill a dragon. But as a player playing Path, maybe you get points for getting the sword.
Yes, correct.
Maybe you get points for getting stronger, and then you have to go kill the dragon for some points. And so that has helped us out a lot. I'm having trouble. The easy solution is just add 10 points on, but like the game is now ending just a little bit before you get too deep into the pass. If you wanted to, like you can just kind of veer off and kind of just improve your character to win, which is fine. I didn't want people to be able to do that, but I feel like it's happening.
Yes.
Every game, so I need to figure out how we're going to get people, shrink the points a little bit on one side, increase points on a little bit on the other side, to get people voting for the path cards. So the path cards now are presenting. I think our goal is to do 8 in the core set, and then you'll play with 3 at a time, and then there will be like provisions in the rules to say, go ahead and play with 5 or 6 if you want to after a few games, but don't sit down to that. And so the path cards now are presenting as a change to the map, an alteration of the way the world works. So, for instance, I think the easiest one to explain is the dragon. So the dragon is always going to be in the game now. The dragon is a piece that sits up on the catacombs, the cauldron, which is one of the spaces in the corner of the map. And you can go fight the dragon, and in fact, there is a reward for fighting the dragon. There's a piece of treasure that you can get from the dragon. And it's one of the 15 treasures in the game, so maybe no one will ever do that. Right, because it's like, do I need this weapon or not, is kind of the question. So if the dragon path card is in the game, now every time there's an event interval, which is when all the players rest. So currently the game is, every character has a certain amount of endurance per day, and when you run out, it's kind of like Oath. You're taking your actions interlaced, and then when you run out of endurance, you pass for the rest of the round until it runs out. And then, just to prevent someone from like figuring out a way to conserve their endurance and having a really long turn, the last player that's still in the round gets 2 more actions, and then they finish. Yep. And there's a bonus for finishing with endurance left. And that's brought a lot of the design sharply into focus, because the moving costs an endurance, and then fighting costs 2 to 3 sometimes in a disaster, it's 6 to 7 endurance, and so it'll cost you basically a round if you fight too
Right.
much. Yeah, and so now when the round ends, the dragon activates. There's all the path cards and a couple other actions are along the top of the board, and the players draft them. And then when they draft it, you get to activate that thing's event. So if you activate the dragon's event, you either put down scouts, so the dragon has these little kobold meeples that you can put down into play outside of the towns that represent the dragon scouts. And then, or when you activate the dragon, you can move the dragon. And so then you pick up the dragon and move it to one of the towns with scouts. And then everybody whose hometown doesn't have a dragon currently sitting on it gets points. So because the dragon can only go to towns with scouts, if the scouts are out in play, you might wander back to your town and kill the scout that's out patrolling your town. And so that sort of interaction is creating a lot more policing and a lot more interactive play states. So we're trying to get every path card to that level of like, if I let this go, something's going to happen to my board state. If I am actively engaged with it, I can earn some points from it. So we're
How do players draft the
event? So the player that went out first, the player that rested first, they just get to choose one event. So it's the 3 path cards, each have an event on them. So all 8 path cards have a unique event. And then based on what the path is. And then, so like for instance, the Settlers one, which is where you're trying to move settlers from Lodestone to there's 3 spaces on the board that are settlement sites. There's a lake monster in the lake, and he will crawl out and attack the player escorting the settlers. And the settlers are worth less points if they get successfully attacked, so you want to protect them as they run by the... and that led to Ted was playing that earlier today, and he did everything he could speed boost his character so he could skip the lake as much as he could, which was still an interesting play moment for him because he spent a lot of time increasing his speed to be able to do that. And then in addition to that, there's a bounty event where you flip over the next bounty and spawn bounties, so that puts more monsters into the game. And I think we're going to add another event that makes the nations activate, because we don't have that right now.
Sure.
Because that used to be one of the paths, and that's now out of the game.
Right.
So now we just want something to make the nations kind of wobble a little bit and do some things. You know, they don't have to be as dramatic as before, but we're like, what if, maybe they could take some pieces off the board, or maybe their borders could grow a little bit. And to make that work again, we do need some sort of, like, how friendly are you with the natives? That kind of thing. So we're working on that right now. So we're doing that. Map has crystallized a lot, and I think we're going to go through another generation of that. I think one of the things we talked about recently is there's so much opportunity at the start of the game, and how do we gatekeep some of the opportunity a little bit better so that the players aren't like, here's 15 things you can do. Here's 5 things you can do, and you're going to learn about 5 more as the game goes on. So we're kind of working on that.
I think this is one of the things that we were talking about space games earlier. One of the things that both Eclipse and TI do so well is, like, despite how big and open the systems are, there are like very few starting moves.
Yes.
Right? Like, activate that system. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think it was good to overreach, because I think one of the complaints of the earlier design was, is the choices are too obvious.
Right.
And now I've hit a line where I'm like, I started the game and I was like, what am I as the designer going to do next is now a very interesting question. So.
Yeah, that is pretty.
So we're getting there. And then I think I'd like to also do a pass where we start making meeples for some of the characters so that I can see the complexity better.
Yep, for sure.
As we were playing it, because the wolves are the same size as the other pieces right now.
Sure.
And I just want a smaller wolf so I can look at it and go, okay.
It's like almost time to start, like, soft locking some theme, or like not soft locking, but like actually getting that stuff in order.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The scale is how would you explain the scale? You don't know either.
Well,
it's like you're an adventurer and you have a party with you.
Like Ohio?
Yeah, perfect. I got some laughs from the production area. I love it.
The map's like the size of Ohio.
Map the size of
3
Ohio.
major cities.
3 major cities and a lake. All the characters, we don't know that. So one of the, Kyle and I were talking a little bit today, and I actually pitched the name Wolf to Kyle instead of Path.
Sure.
Because there are wolves in the game to fight. And then I was thinking about wolf being like the like the way that cowboy or ronin is used as a shorthand for adventurer in that setting. Like
Sure.
cowboys really didn't go around shooting each other all day.
Right.
Right, but
the cows.
but the adventure,
Yes.
the Western adventure, that is cowboy means someone that runs around and shoots people all day. So in that fantasy world, wolf would be like the name for this class of person. That's like the adventurer.
So Return of Warg.
I just wanted Warg back. It says it right
Oh,
there.
wow, that's amazing. That was a fascinating.
Okay, so I'm talking about wolf right now, but now I'm thinking Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio, also a good front.
So we're powering through that. The point system has brought a lot of things into shape. There's two things mechanically I'm interested in next, and it is and like before I lock the vision, and that is currently you kind of get points by stealing. And you kind of get points by, stealing, adventuring, whatever you want to call it. So you get treasure from ruins and dungeons and things like that, and the item, like the special items you can get from there. And then you also get points from fighting. And I still would like there to be some sort of system in the world where investigation or pursuing rumors or talking to people in the towns is part of the like some of the treasures are reserved for that system, right. And it's like you get a lead and you go to a town that gives you a lead and you go to a town and then you find a sword.
I think it's like one of the hardest design prompts is to think about how do you make leads and talking to people actually
interesting.
Yep. Like it's just difficult design prompt.
And delivery's in there because you can build the public buildings now. So delivery has been kind of taken care of. So maybe we don't need it because that would be kind of a stand-in for how delivery would have worked mechanically. But I'm still very compelled by this idea that there's little bonuses you can get by talking to people. So I'm working on that. And then one of the things that we talked about at Origins or prior to Origins is that there would always be a fourth path card in the game called Death, whereas your character dies, and that is part of the story. And so we've been talking about like, if you get defeated, is that like a step towards dying? And then can you earn, like, is there a story moment where you earn points for dying, and then you start a new sub-version of your character and continue the story? And so then there's this moment where you say, I don't mind a small setback in the game, just maybe in the middle game. You don't want to do it too early because it would be like boring, and you don't want to do it too late because you're just going to go, well, I'm just going to finish the game with these points. But if there's somewhere in the middle where you can say there's a 5-point reward for your character restarting, I'd really like to push on that and see how that works. So
that's interesting.
Anyway, any questions?
Cool. No, I have questions, but
none for camera.
not for camera. None that can be answered in the space that we probably have left. Do you want to touch on some of the other little projects that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, fun. A couple winters ago, John Gilmore and Travis Magram and I started working on a game called Snow, which was based on an older design of mine, which is a asymmetric game about walking through the woods. Yeah, exactly. Multi-generational after death. So Snow is a little game about walking through woods. It started out not asymmetric. You were all families walking through the woods, and now it is asymmetric, where it is it's the family, and it's the Snow as a player, and the animals in the woods are a player. And so they're all trying, like the animals are trying to eat, the family's just trying to have some fun, the Snow is trying to get the players to the game.
Right.
To slow they represent death and the inevitable death. And Nick took it and started a development pass on it, and one of the concerns he came back with is that the players playing the Snow felt like they were the dungeon master of the game and not actually engaged in the game like the way that the cave is. Right. So I just took the Snow player out.
There you go.
And both players now control the Snow, and so so now it's 2-player, and Alita's been doing a development pass on that, and that's been going okay. I've also been working on Block, which I think if you go back to my Twitter, you can see, and Block is a open world kind of an abstract at this point.
Yeah, it's like an abstract.
Yeah, it's an abstract, and you are based. So the board is made up of a collection of blocks, and we've gone through a couple of iterations of this game, even different styles of play, because it's based on a flicking game I had. And so block is a collection of blocks that make up the map in the center of the board, and then meeples are traversing the blocks during the game, and depending on which faction they are, they're trying to manipulate the terrain in some way. So one player is just trying to cross the map, another player is hunting the other player's meeples. The gardeners are trying to, like, every time they move somewhere, they leave grass pieces behind. They green the map as they walk. And then when enough grass accumulates in an area, a tree forms. And so they're trying to get a number of trees into play. And then the builders are harvesting materials from the map, and they are leaving buildings behind. And the buildings then all have, and I think I need to move every roll in this direction. Everybody's piece has a role on and everyone else.
Yeah.
So like the gardeners, when they plant a tree, the builders now have a new source of lumber. And the seekers, when they walk, they leave labyrinth pieces behind, and the other players can use that to get bonus movement and so on. So that's in place right now, and I've just been playtesting that at night.
Yeah.
It's on TTS. I've played games publicly, and it's been going okay. It's weird on TTS because it's such a physical thing, and then you're playing on TTS, and you get a lot of baggage because of that. And then, like right after Vast came out, folks like Rodney, not Rodney, who's the reviewer in the Maldives? He plays all the games with his wife, Richard.
Not Maldives, Malta.
Malta, sorry, yes, Malta.
Rado.
He challenged us to make a game that was an asymmetric Euro, and I'd years before I'd worked on a game that was an asymmetric Euro, but I never got it to solidify. And so I've come back to that. Kyle gave me an idea for a theme, and I've come back and started working on that. And there's been some attempts at asymmetric Euros, but I feel like they are then focusing on the player having, it's like, Cole, you're gonna play bingo.
Yeah, they're all bad.
And I'm gonna play craps.
Yes.
And then we are gonna accumulate tokens. You only get bingo scale tokens, and I get the constant drip, and then we're gonna compete with our tokens. And so my conceit is that you have to, even if it's asymmetric, you have to, the obvious conceit of asymmetry is you have to make the interaction very strong. So I'm working on that right now.
Yeah.
And that is designed. I just haven't had time to play test it. I literally put 5s in a bunch of the numbers. So the first game I'm gonna go, no, it's
Yeah, it doesn't
no, it's gonna work.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, we have enough. I mean, one of the things about working on these games is that oftentimes products of this scale take a year or more to realize.
Yep.
So we end up having to kind of have a lot of little fires at the iron, and then you pick one, and the opportunity costs are very sharp because you're like, yep, this is the one I'm hanging out with for the next 2.5 years. I feel that keenly with Harks.
But I like that I've been working on these because it keeps my brain fresh for Path in the morning. And then there's been some work on Block that has crossed over into Path, so it's been worth doing. So.
Sure. Da Vinci has a question here. Do you ever feel narrative dissatisfaction with player-controlled NPCs?
Go ahead, Cole.
What? I mean, yes. I think player-controlled NPCs are like unfortunate necessary evil. Because you're asking a player to play multiple positions.
Yeah, step out of their chair for a moment.
Which is like, so they have this, so one way of thinking about it is that you're making a gambit. It's not a gambit, it's just a cost. You say, all right, player, I'm gonna steal your immersion to make this NPC
work better.
better.
I mean, but that's like the conceit of Vast is avoiding all this.
Yes.
Because the goblins aren't a NPC. They're the player.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. You have this is like why high in theory. I mean, I've played Magic Realm with 5 people. I've never played with more.
Right.
But I liked the 5-player because the world felt so living, and I think it's why people like, because you start feeling like they're the NPCs. You're having these chance encounters with other players. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't mind it that much in Zia, but it's also because in Zia the actions of the NPCs are pretty clear. You're not making a lot of choices for them. But yeah, I think the NPC problem is hard, making it feel like a lived-in world. Yeah. Tricky for a board game.
Yeah, and you and I talk a lot about cutting down on upkeep time anyway, which I feel is linked to this question also.
No,
It's that you don't want the player to be sitting there just processing moves for 5 minutes and then, like Arkham Horror is my I like Arkham Horror, but it's like you get a minute turn and then maybe the Mythos phase and everyone else's turns is 7-8 minutes. So you're like, yeah. So
I think it's okay in it's a weird okay in solo, but maybe less okay in 2-player.
Yeah.
It's been interesting watching this happen with John Company because you can use the bot in 2 players. And so if you think about the bot as an NPC, people love the bot. They play it a lot in 1-player. Not a lot of 2-player though. Because with 2-player, people say I would rather not have you come over and play against the bot, or I'd rather find a third person.
right.
And it's because I think when you're engaging with someone else, now the bot is a barrier between you and the other player.
Sure.
As opposed to being, it's about the barrier.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's a good question.
Have you played Labyrinth 1-player? The War in Terror? I'm just curious. I started playing it once and I was like, oh, this bot. So
I've been, I've been finding myself. So I don't, it's funny. You and I were talking about Spirit Island earlier this week, and I was saying how I think it just might be too complex for what I want out of a co-op.
yeah.
And I was thinking about that. Do I mean that about solo games too? And then I realized that I actually this year I've played more solo games than any other time in my life because I've been playing all these war games.
Right.
And the war games, you just play multi-handed.
Right.
Because there's a command uncertainty, you roll it and you're like, okay, what's the position I take?
Right.
And I'll even take notes. I'll say look, I'm trying to take this town.
Right.
I'd like to get there by Tuesday
Right.
or whatever. And I'm executing that strategy. And I love doing that.
Right.
I think it works great. And I think I don't need an elaborate bot to tell me what to do.
So you're role playing.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean I think Drew is the one who really hit upon this where the really good 18xx games and also the really good war games
Yeah.
are more like role-playing games than they are anything else.
I mean, Crusader Kings are still ours. Still ours, I play a role-playing game at this point. I don't play it to win. I play what if I was a freedom-loving.
Well, and I was telling this too, and I know we're about to close things down, but I was telling this to someone recently how one thing I love about I wish there was a better acronym, but the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. One thing I love about this series is that you feel so on the ground, and it's because the maps are so detailed.
Right.
You're looking at a mile hex map of a part of Virginia, and you're like, okay, my guys are stuck, and the rain is coming, and now these streams are rivers, and I can't move across them.
Right.
And my guys are getting tired. Can they make it to this town before night? And you just have this. It's so immersive. It's so story forward, in the way that I want a really good role-playing game to be. And as much as I like a lot of the work that we do in the mainstream hobby market, I think that there are certain kinds of stories and their specificity that war games and role-playing games can do that we kind of don't get to do with Root or Vast or Arcs or any of that stuff.
What I hear is you want Rain and Root.
I want Rain and Root. It would be dumb.
Precisely.
Okay, yeah. If you never thought 18xx as an RPG, think about 1817 as an RPG.
You're a powerful rail baron.
The first, a very short aside, the very first time I played 1830, I roped in role-playing gamers who got really into it because they said they felt like it was so open, they could do anything. They could just start a company, and they felt like they weren't playing a board game. They felt like they were playing a role-playing game.
I saw at a local con, I saw someone running TI as a role-playing game.
Yeah.
And you could tell the other players, he was just like, my fellow constituents, blah, blah, blah. And then during the governance phase, whatever it's called, the voting phase, and everyone else just wasn't there for it.
There's just, I think that all the games that we work on, I'm glad there's a lot of discourse about immersive sims right now, because I feel like the games that we work on are more like immersive sims and board games than anything else. And we know what the end of that track is.
Right.
And it's the role-playing game or the conflict simulation space.
Right.
We're just hitting it at an earlier place that lets them be playable in an evening.
Right.
Okay, we can talk about this all day.
Okay.
RootCon Arcs demo. Yes, Josh and I will both be at RootCon, and we are going to unveil a large ArcsCon banner, which will be flailing over the RootCon banner. We'll be there. If you want to play Arcs at RootCon, you can certainly do
Was that in the long box that arrived today?
No, that is a banner for Gen Con.
Okay.
I think. Question about the Oath expansion. The answer is maybe. The answer is maybe. So we actually, we did get
Will you be able to ride dinosaurs in the Oath expansion?
No, yeah, but so someone asked, like, we talked about how the factory quotes, we weren't sure what was going to be viable.
Yeah.
We have a wide viability space, so we will be able to make the expansion that we want to. Okay, cool. That's it. We've gone over time.
We're way over time. I'm sorry, everybody.
No, I mean,
I'm sorry to your employers.
there's also a lot of we had a lot of ARC stuff to get through. Thank you all for tuning in. You'll next see probably Patrick Nick for the August chat because I think I'll be gone. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Ours is a busy month, but we'll see you in a month or so.
Yeah.
And if you're at Gen Con, please come by and say hi. We'd love to see you in person.
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely Tuesday.
See ya. Bye bye.